If you explained amp modeling and multi-effects units to the average non-guitar playing person, how might that person think these units would affect guitar players? In an industry that once required players to search for their sound through physical gear, which was often expensive and hard to find, these boxes must have turned everything on its head. Even with a cheap virtual unit, every player gets access to hundreds of amps and effects, removing the need for scouring shops and other places for hard-to-find pieces of gear. The search for your sound can now be carried out digitally within the comfort of your own home. So surely, with the advent of digital modeling, players started to sound more unique, right? And of course, the players who sound the most unique would be doing it with digital modeling. Well, why would they do it any other way? This line of thinking makes sense, but if you've spent any time in the guitar internet culture, or you listen to music lately, you'll know that this isn't necessarily true. This age certainly is not without its innovators, but a lot of guitar players, especially modeler users arguably, sound the same now. Meanwhile, the person with the most unique guitar sound in popular music is doing it with old analog gear. What's going on here? So the innovative artist I was thinking of here is the guitarist and producer mk.gee. That's mk.gee. If you have not heard him, pause this video right now and go listen to 2 Star in the Dream Police. You'll be glad you did, and maybe come back when you're done. So mk.gee's sounds are like nothing else I've heard out of an electric guitar, and I think a lot of people felt that way. The basis of his guitar sound is the preamp of a Tascam Portastudio, which is an analog tape recording machine. And this is accentuated with a heavy dose of pedal effects being run in creative ways. So, of course, when people heard this sound, they all rushed to copy it, and with good reason. So imagine for a second that mk.gee emerges on the scene 30 years ago instead of right now. So 30 years ago, there was an internet, but there wasn't nearly as much information on it. And most players had much less access to gear than they do now. Amp modelers really weren't that good, and they were not nearly as powerful. So if you were a player and you heard this sound, you had to search for it. So I can imagine a player starting off by taking their existing gear, their guitar, their amp, and maybe a few pedals, and trying to make this sound happen, dialing things in, trying to get them as close as possible to how they recall it sounding. And then maybe realizing that they're not that close. Later, maybe they read a guitarist magazine that has mk.gee on the cover, and he explains what he's using. And then that player hears about these pieces of gear and starts looking at yard sales and at shops, just trying to find something close, maybe purchasing some of these things and trying to dial them in to get somewhere near this sound. Maybe eventually that player gets there. Maybe they find that sound, or at least it's close enough for them. Maybe they never do. But either way, the player has experimented, the player has learned how their existing pieces of gear work, and learned creative ways to use new things. Today, if you want to sound like mk.gee and you own a modeler, the easiest thing to do is just Google mk.gee Helix preset. Download it, put it on your Helix, and you're pretty much there right away. It's convenient, it's accurate, and you get to do it without doing any experimentation. You can get to the sound you want without ever making a sound that you don't like. So the result might be the same, or even better than the result for our analog guy who had to put so much more work into this. But the process and what each player learns along the way is completely different. Our analog guy learned to experiment. He broadened his tonal palette, where the modeler user not only doesn't get that experience of tweaking gear and using it in unconventional ways, but they're almost discouraging themselves from doing it the next time. They've learned to get the right tone instantly, learned that that's possible, and learned to search for it. I could use this as an opportunity to wax poetic about our tonal forefathers and bemoan the machines for taking away our creativity and our individuality. But the problem isn't the machines. It's our mindsets. The digital world offers us a lot of the benefits of the analog stuff if we just embrace experimenting and occasionally being wrong. So I'm a Helix user. I'll use the Helix as an example. There are a bunch of normal options in the Helix. It's easy to set up a amp and pedals rig with pretty much whatever amp and whatever pedals I want. But in addition to that, the Helix gives me things like microphone preamps and a megaphone and a vintage tape machine that I'm welcome to use however I want. Not only that, but I can change the order of normal things completely free of consequence. If I want to run an amp into another amp, which would blow up in the real world, I'm free to do that. And the worst thing that can happen is I make a bad sound. I can run an amp with no cab. I can put a fuzz completely wherever I want. Use your imagination. Anything can go anywhere, and I can do it easily, and I can do it without worrying about breaking anything. The sonic playground here is immense. I'm going to play an example of a couple of unconventional guitar tones in a track. So the main rhythm guitar track here is using the Helix retro reel block. So this is a tape emulation block. I'm using a little bit of tape modulation and a lot of tape saturation, and then taking a bunch of high end and a decent amount of low end off. And then there's a lead tone where I use that same tape emulation block with the same slapback delay and a little bit of a longer delay, and I put a fuzz pedal in front of it. So the point here isn't to say that these are the best guitar sounds on earth, that you should strive to emulate them, or even that these particular things sound that good. The point is that if you're looking for the kind of rough edges that defined the guitar playing of yesteryear, or if you're looking for a individual sound that's unique to you, that probably exists in the modeling world. If you've made it to this point in the video, I would encourage you to take whatever you have and experiment with using it in ways that you maybe hadn't thought of before. Try generating a sound that you haven't heard before and see if you can make music with it. The worst thing that happens is you make a bad sound and you've had a little bit of fun. And the best case scenario is that you sound a little bit more like you. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.